What advice would you give them on starting a podcast and what can happen for them if they do it?
If you look at our early podcasts, I'm a lot fatter in the early podcast. So I started watching my own podcast. So I'm like, holy cow, what has happened to you, Rob? So I've lost a bunch of weight and I'm in much better shape. So that would be one ancillary benefit.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder and CEO of Milemarker. And today, I am joined for a great conversation by Rob Hoxton. Rob is the founder and partner of Hoxton Planning and Management, and he currently lives on a 200-year-old family farm. Rob, thanks for joining the show.
Kyle, it's great to be with you.
Absolutely. All right, you got to tell me about the farm. So 200-year-old family farm, what's the story behind that? I love that type of stuff.
Yeah, so it's just the family's lived on the farm for over 200 years. I think maybe 1820. I'm not a farmer, but I take care of things on the farm. But I'm not so great with tools. I'm much better with a keyboard. And it's hard to make a living as a farmer anymore and on a small farm. So I decided to be a financial planner.
Oh, that's great. Well, that actually fits into my first question that I love to ask everybody is after a bunch of these conversations, Rob, I've found everybody has their own unique path to our industry. Some people, it's a traditional path. Maybe they're following in family footsteps. Some people, maybe they came in the side door. But what I've found is whether it's a traditional path or a non-traditional path, everybody has what we call a money moment. And that's that moment in your life where something clicked and you decided maybe I'm not meant to be a farmer, but I'm meant to be a financial planner. But Rob, what was that money moment for you that led you to sit in the chair you're in right now?
And it was a long and winding road, Kyle. It started, when I was in school, I was pretty sure that I was going to go to seminary and be an Episcopal priest.
Okay.
So I spent a summer with my high school girlfriend, who's now my wife of 36 years, working in the coal fields of southern West Virginia for the Episcopal Church, and it became really obvious that I wasn't supposed to be a minister, but I still wanted to make a difference. And so I've always been somewhat of a salesman. My grandfather pulled me aside and said, you could do God's work and be a business person. So maybe you ought to do that. And so I tried that. I worked in a family business, which was aviation insurance, and it was ugly. I just failed miserably at it. But one of my favorite customers was a life insurance agent, and a very successful one at that. In fact, he called himself a life insurance agent. He actually had become the CEO of a mid-sized mutual company in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And he recruited me into the life insurance business. And so from there, I got my CFP and then started my practice. So there were lots of starts and stops, but I find this career path is such a rewarding one because you really can make a difference. I'm not leading people to salvation spiritually, but I'm helping them figure out their future financial situation, which can make them happy.
I love that. That's a really cool money moment. Thank you for sharing all of that. I chuckle about the aviation insurance thing because I think a lot of people, you have to kind of go down some paths that don't work out to be able to find the one that does, even if it's a path that might seem like it's going to make a lot of sense.
Crash and burn. That's what happened. I crashed and burned, but I walked away from it. So
that's good. Hopefully you had aviation insurance on that flight that crashed and burned. So I don't know. This just popped into my head as you were sharing that. I haven't ever asked anybody this before, but I feel like it's a good one for you. Is there any, couple highlights or moments of people's lives or financial situations that you've changed? Obviously, you can keep information anonymous, but any situations or cases that you're just really proud of the work that you've done at Hoxton Wealth Management and your career?
Yeah, there are a lot. There are a couple that are particularly poignant that I can't even talk about without getting emotional, frankly. And it's hard for me to talk about it because they're unique and they could be, if somebody watched the podcast, they might know that I was talking about their family number. But I was a not terribly successful life insurance agent, and I kept at it because I was told that if I did it well, at some point that insurance would make a difference in the lives of one of our customers. And so I didn't sell a whole lot of life insurance, but there were a couple that really made a big difference and really kept families together in very difficult times when, in this case, fathers got sick and died prematurely. That's always something you hate to see, but it's like, okay, I'm glad that I'm in this business for that reason. There's another one, a client I was meeting with recently, very recently, actually. We were updating the financial plan. They've been clients for maybe 25 years. I'll do 6, 7, 8, 9 financial plan update meetings in a week, which to me is a heavy lift if you're doing comprehensive planning. And this client and his wife are at my conference table, and she said, I don't know if you know this, but my husband can tell you the exact moment, the date and the time that you looked up from your computer and looked at him and said, you can go ahead and retire.
Oh.
And that was 15 years ago. He's 80 years old now, and he's still working part-time. And I'm like, wait, you are not very coachable. So we had a great laugh. But, it's so much fun when you work with these clients for a long time. You get to see the benefit of the work that you've done for them. And you got to be at this for a long time before you get to really reap that benefit. Those would be a couple of examples of really just amazing experiences. That's the psychic income that you get from being a really great financial planner or advisor.
I love that phrase. It's like the psychological income or the psychic income. That's really cool. Your answer didn't disappoint, and I'm glad I asked. I think that's really cool because I remember earlier on in my time in this space, I was working for Riskalyze and I was doing a bunch of travel. And I remember hearing Jim Bowen from First Trust talk one time. And one of the key tenets of what he said is like, this is a noble profession, right? He was looking at a room full of advisors and he said, you are all noble professionals. I know the media likes to paint a certain picture that you guys are all out there slinging, high commission products and taking advantage of little old ladies. But the vast majority of advisors have stories like the ones you just shared. And I just remember being so impacted by that it's like, yeah, most advisors are really, really making a difference. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, I think it's so true.
So, all right, pivoting a little bit more to the nuts and bolts of business. You've had an eventful career involved in growing a firm and then selling it and then buying a portion of that firm back. Not many people have that type of experience. What did you learn from that? Unpack that from us a little bit.
I learned a lot. I learned what was really important to me from a professional standpoint. And my personal life and my professional life are probably a little too closely knitted together. There's nothing I enjoy more than being a financial planner and the owner of a small financial planning business. But, I started the business when I was 26, I believe, having just failed in the family aviation insurance business, which is still successful. My brother owns and runs that. He does a great job of it, my little brother. But, in those days, I was studying for my CFP at night. I was doing meetings at kitchen tables with young families in the evenings. I was cold calling because we still could then, sitting on the corner of our bed. My prospect manual was a phone book, and I was interrupting people's dinners. I mean, it was hard. I managed to build a business over a period of time, and then anybody that's in this business, that's in a small business and an independent, like we are, truly independent, it can get a little bit lonely. And I just decided I'd like to be part of a large organization, so we merged up with United Capital, Joe Duran's brainchild, which is amazing, frankly. I mean, the guy's brilliant, and put this really cool opportunity together for like-minded small business owners around the country to come together and do something really meaningful. And over time, that ended up being sold to Goldman Sachs. And Goldman is, an awesome firm. They do some things really well, but we weren't really a very good fit, personally. So, and we still do a lot of business with Goldman. So I don't, it is what it is. But I had a son who was, when I joined up with United Capital, that we merged with United Capital, he was getting ready. He was just finishing his undergrad and was getting ready to get at Texas Tech for the financial planning master's program, which is top shelf. And I knew that he would likely want to come into business with me. And, wasn't really something that could happen probably in my sense in the Goldman structure. So, I just talked to them, and we worked out an arrangement for me to break away and do it in an honorable way. And so I love Goldman Sachs for that. So we are completely independent. And I learned that if you've never worked for a big company, when you get into your mid-50s, it's really hard to start. So we joke a little bit about Rob's kind of an outdoor cat. I'm not really easily domesticated. I haven't had my front claws removed. And so I'm in a great place now. So worked out super.
That's awesome. And it looked like one of the things that you did pretty early on after that happened is you kind of turned this into a family business. So your son Archie joined you. Talk about that a little bit. Did he always want to kind of follow in the footsteps and come into the industry, or is this his aviation insurance, or, are we going a different path here?
It's really weird, actually. His path is so similar to mine. So like me, he was an English major in college. He went to West Virginia University. I didn't, but he did. And as an English major, he finished his time at WVU. After he graduated, he had applied, unbeknownst to me, to the master's program at Texas Tech and deferred admission and went to work as a campus missionary for a Catholic organization where he had to raise his own living. And he was posted up at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. Spent a couple of years doing that. And then when that gig was over, went down to Lubbock for grad school. So like me, he thought he was called to something at a higher level, and then just really sort of fell in love with financial planning or he was in school, and was recruited by Vanguard and worked as a high net worth advisor for Vanguard for a couple of years. And then before he got too expensive, I convinced him to come back and join me. So he's now my partner. And we've also added a third partner. We acquired another business from a breakaway advisor, and his name is Jimmy Such, and he's doing a great job. So we're growing.
That's awesome. I love that.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Hey, this is Judd Mackerel. Thanks for listening to this show. I just wanted to ask you one question. What's your technology and data strategy for 2025? If you can't clearly answer that question, I'd love to talk. We are spending some specific time with select firms to really go deep and help you clearly answer that question. We believe that it's one of the things that often holds back firms from really achieving their potential, from really achieving growth, and really getting a lot of the things in the position that they need to be. The things that are holding up the way that you scale, like your workflows, how you manage data around your revenue, how you report all of that to your advisors, and getting clarity in all those things. I'm sure there's a lot of very specific things to your business that are really important as well. And we'd love to talk about that. If this is interesting to you, hit me up with an email. My direct email is jud@milemarker.co. And I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, hear what your strategy is, and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you get more clear on that strategy in 2025. Thanks.
Well, and it looks like Archie's actually guiding some of the strategies for Hoxton. One of his recommendations by our research was for you all to start a YouTube channel, and you guys have a podcast. So you're on the other side of the microphone for this one.
Yeah, he's, it's often been said that I have a face for radio, and he's actually a lot better looking and does a great job in front of the camera. So he's the host of Last Paycheck. One of the questions that I've always gotten, and I'm sure all of your viewers get too, is from clients is like, oh my gosh, what's it going to be like when that last paycheck comes? And so that being a chief question, it's hard to come up with cool names for podcasts anymore because they've all been taken. So we grabbed that one. We've been at it for a year and a half. We've got just under 3,000 subscribers, and it's gone really well.
That's fantastic.
It's a lot of fun.
And I got to ask you, because, you go from sitting on the edge of your bed, cold calling out of the phone book, interrupting people's dinners, growing this thing with shoe leather and elbow grease. Probably not in your nature to do YouTube and podcast to grow a firm. So what was your initial reaction when he comes and he's like, hey, we got to do this, right? We got to start a podcast. We got to do a YouTube channel.
My reaction was, what's YouTube? So now I'm a big fan of YouTube. I watch way too much of it. I had a radio show out here in West Virginia for 3 years, and I could never tell if anybody was listening to it. There were a couple of crazy people that would call in every once in a while, but beyond that, I don't know that anybody was listening to it. And the cool thing about YouTube is that you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell if anybody's watching it. We've always grown just from, clients referring people they care about to us, and from local CPAs and attorneys doing the same. And we thought, well, if we really want to grow, we might need some other way to reach our target market. And our target is not far flung. It's really, 30 miles from Shepherdstown, West Virginia. We'd like to be well known in a fairly small area. So
I wanted to ask you about that, because when we were researching this, we saw that you kind of restrict this to a 30-mile radius. One of the big reasons people choose YouTube or a podcast, it's a great one-to-many communication channel. It can create brand exposure all across. And then, with things like Zoom and everything now, a firm like yours could work with somebody in Montana or New Mexico or wherever. And so that's why we want to use these digital things. You went the contrarian way and you said, yeah, sure, but I'm going to restrict this reach to just our 30-mile radius to help us be really well known. Help us unpack that decision.
So it's a matter of personal preference. And we have clients that are all over the country, mostly because they started here and then moved. For me, the thing that I enjoy most about the business is a personal contact. And what we're doing right now is amazing. It seems like we're sitting in the same room.
Yeah.
But I just really enjoy being able to get face to face, looking at a financial plan across the hood of somebody's F-250 out in the field. I mean, that is, it doesn't get much better than that. And with COVID, we had to adjust, of course. And so now we have clients that are local that they actually prefer not to come to the office. So we do Zoom or Teams meetings, and that's just fine. But we see them at the grocery store, we see them at church, we see them, at the softball field, whatever. It's just really, we're small town folks, and we just like that. We deliver first class city type services, but we are at our core small town people.
I love that. All right. As somebody who runs a podcast myself, I think, I have stories and feelings about, what this thing has meant to me. But let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, Rob, I've been kicking around the idea of starting a podcast. You're right. All the good names are taken, but I found one that works. What advice would you give them on what to expect, in starting a podcast and what can happen for them if they do it?
It's easier than I thought it would be, right? I mean, this is the stuff that we do every day, right? Mm-hmm. What we talk about in the podcast is what we do every day. Our clients give us our content. We don't have to go to ChatGPT and say, give me some ideas for our episode, because we're getting those ideas from clients every day. So that's easy. Another thing that's been really surprising to me is that in order to do it, in order to cover the topics that people really want you to cover, because you're being recorded, you really want to make sure that you know your stuff.
Yeah.
And so we found that it's really helped us sort of sharpen the blade a little bit in terms of our knowledge and ability to communicate complex issues in a simple way. So that's been a really great discovery that we found with it. It has not been hard to come up with the content. Now, we only do 15 minutes a week, and then we do 5 shorts. So it's pretty contained, and we figure everybody's got a short attention span. And the other thing that we decided was really important, we could have figured out probably how to produce a podcast, put it on YouTube, on Spotify, whatever. It probably wouldn't have been all that polished, but we could have done it and it wouldn't have really cost as much, because you can buy the equipment for a couple $1,000s. And if you have a computer, you're good to go. But what we realized is that, look, we don't really make money producing podcasts. We're never going to be as good as a professional at this. And we need to walk in, do the podcast, get up, and go get in front of a client right away if we're going to maximize our results as a business. So we decided to outsource production and have been really happy with that.
Awesome. Have you seen any kind of secondary, hard to measure benefits from doing this as well?
Yeah. One of them, really obviously, if you look at our early podcasts, I'm a lot fatter in the early podcast. So I started watching my own podcast. So I'm like, holy cow, what has happened to you, Rob? So I've lost a bunch of weight and I'm in much better shape. So that would be one ancillary benefit.
I got to give you a trophy. That's the hardest I've laughed on this show in 70 something episodes. That was pretty good. That was not expected. So you go into new digital realities, but you keep it to the 30-mile radius. You love this kind of close thing, but that has not stopped you from growing. I know you said you acquired another firm or you had a breakaway join you, but it looks like you've just about doubled in size in the past 24 months or so. And you mentioned that the podcast isn't the primary driver for that growth. So what do you attribute all of that growth to?
Well, it's not yet the primary driver of growth. The acquisition, we added clients and assets, but most of it has come from just organic growth, clients referring the people they care about to us, and professional referrals from local CPAs and attorneys, and a strong market. We all benefit from that. So, yesterday, this was mid-January when we're recording this. Yesterday, we crossed that 500 million mark. We started, I think, around 280 or something, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, a little less than 3 years ago. So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
That's awesome.
We have pretty big growth goals as well.
What are some of your growth goals?
We measure our success in terms of families served. So we don't really do any institutional business anymore, and it's mostly just families and individuals. So over our next 9 years, we expect to serve 800 families. We'll have to grow and hire, and we're out of space, and there's not a lot of options out here in the country. So we'll probably have to build a building, and it's just a lot going on, but it makes things fun.
That's awesome, man. I love that. I love too that, our industry is so measured by the assets that you manage or the, that type of stuff. I love that you've said our definition of success is the number of families served, which is great because it keeps the focus on who this is all about. And it's not that other advisors don't care about that, but so many people like that measuring stick to be the number of assets that they manage or things like that. And I love that for you, it sounds like all families are equal regardless of how much AUM they bring.
Our goal is to help families be happier through, financial planning and resource management. That's our sort of internal mission. It's what makes us, it's what we're passionate about. But do not mistake that we are not into those other details. So we know that our average household is just at 1.3 million. We know at our fee schedule where we're profitable. And so we do have account minimums and things like that, but we really measure our success. I've always found that chasing the dollar just makes me unhappy. I really need something that is more meaningful than what is my AUM or what is my income, or that is just so hollow. So for me, if we are serving 800 families profitably, the money will be there. The opportunities for our team will be there. We'll grow. We'll make a difference. So, but we are into the details. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. All right. You said one of the ways that you've been growing is through professional referrals or center of influence referrals. And this is a question I like to ask people because I think if you go to any sort of advisor training thing or you get any advice, it's like, hey, you got to figure out how to get referrals from centers of influence, right? Find a CPA, find an attorney, find this. And, everybody goes out there. But the thing I love to ask is, I'm sure there's no shortage of people knocking on the doors of these folks. And I think there's probably some sort of systematic process that leads to consistent growth there. So how are you actually having success with COIs? Do you have a playbook around it? Or, are you just building relationships or, how does that work?
I think that it starts with just doing really great work and having integrity. Right. So now word gets out, there's nothing that travels quicker than bad news. So if you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, that gets around really quickly. The good work gets around a little more slowly, but clients tell their other advisors about you if you're doing really great work for them. And we've been in this community now for almost 33 years doing it. So we have, and it's a small community. So we're relatively well known, I would say. Actually, we had some great advice. There's a guy named Jonathan Cutton who does some sort of coaching for advisors that want to work with CPAs more closely. He's been very successful with it. And when we were part of United Capital, they brought him in and they did some coaching. So we've done some things like we've helped one accounting firm establish their own investment advisor.
Oh, cool.
State investment advisor, and they refer clients to us. They get a share of the revenue. So they basically get what we would normally allocate to profit. And then we just have to be really careful with the expenses. So they get that. And they've actually brought CPAs from other firms in that have been able to operate underneath that investment advisor representative. So we've been willing to take some risk, and share the wealth a little bit. And a lot of professional CPAs particularly still are just like, I don't want to muddy the water. I don't want to receive any share of revenue. I just want to refer to the best people I know. And so I think that we're usually one of the 2 or 3 that get referred, and all I can ask for is a shot on goal. And then it's up to me, right?
I love that. All right, let's transition to one of my favorite segments of the show. So in the chair that you're in, you're thinking about how am I going to serve 800 families? You're thinking about a lot of things, but you are looking into the future. And so I love to ask people like yourself to get out their crystal ball, proverbially, and look into the future and tell us what are some of the trends that you see bubbling up to the top of the surface for the industry that you think are going to greatly impact your firm and your role in the next couple of years?
Gosh, that's a tough question, Kyle. I have done that, tried to do that, and gotten it really wrong in the past. Before I joined up with a larger organization, that was back in 2016, I was serving on the national board of Financial Planning Association. And as a member of the board, we got to see some pretty cool research about the profession, about where things were going. And I interpreted some of that about fee compression, and I interpreted it as being sort of a dire clarion call about what the future meant. So I thought, well, we've got to get efficiencies. We've got to be bigger. And so we can only grow so quickly. So let's join a bigger firm. And that really fueled that decision. And I think that we've had fee compression. And I think, though, it's come more in the form of not necessarily lower fees, but higher expectations and more work to get the same fee. I know that in the way that we do financial planning for clients, we look for ways to demonstrate how we're earning the fee in real dollars, right? We may show them some sort of Roth conversion strategy and project it out over their life expectancy and say, okay, here, this is going to mean this much potentially, this range of dollars for you. And hopefully they're drawing the connection in their mind. It's like, okay, well, we're paying them $10,000 to do this work for us, but this just meant $500,000 in increased, reduced taxes or whatever it ends up being. So we are really careful about that. So I think that the fee compression thing is turned out to be true, but in a way that I didn't anticipate. I don't think now that you have to be part of a really big firm, because what's available from a tech standpoint allows you to do much of what you normally had to be part of a big firm to do. One of the things that I'm really interested in, curious about, is the impact that artificial intelligence and quantum computing will have on our profession. I mean, I'm using it. I love it. I can see how being a bionic advisor is an amazing thing, and it helps you be more effective, more efficient, do more with less. But I do wonder what parts of our practice will not be necessary because of AI. And I will tell you that one of the AI tools that we're using provides a scribing service, which is amazing. We used to have an employee that sat in most of our client meetings, so that as the financial planner, I would be completely engaged with the client and not taking notes. Meanwhile, this employee would be jotting down notes. Now, we had 1.5 people that did that, basically, 1.5 full-time equivalents doing that. And now they're repurposed. They're doing something else. One of them is pursuing her CFP, and she's going to be a great financial planner. She's already working with clients. So instead of scribing, She's actually becoming a professional, which is awesome. I didn't have to hire somebody to come in behind her, though. The other person is just doing more client administration than she used to, because she doesn't have to be in those meetings. So I do worry a little bit about where artificial intelligence may take us. I see a huge opportunity in that as well. I'm a glasses half full kind of guy, so I'm going to find the good stuff in that and try not to be impacted negatively by the bad. So
I love that. I love the concept of the bionic advisor. I know people have been talking about that for a little bit. I'm extremely bullish on AI. I've become bullish. I also think some people are attributing more capability to it today than it has, even though it's getting better and better every day. But I am also very, very bullish on this idea that as AI takes more and more of a role in our lives, people are going to crave human connection more. So even if AI could do some of the stuff at some point that a person could do, they're gonna want human connection to verify some of that stuff, to give a second opinion, to do those types of things. And I think in person and events and what you're talking about being within a 30-mile radius is going to start to matter more and more as all of those things take place.
Yeah, I think you are spot on, Kyle. I know I see it in other areas. Medical services. You cannot get in front of a doctor anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't that long ago where you had these guys, mostly men at the time, because, that was back in the days where most of the doctors were men, but they would get on a horse and have a bag and come to your house. That was, maybe 100 years ago. That's not very long in the scope of human history. And now we're starting to see the growth in the idea of concierge medicine, where you can actually have that kind of a service if you can afford it. And I think that there is a part of the population who is going to want what we do. If we are able to make that human connection, and if AI helps us do it, all the better.
I love it. All right, we are going to transition to the final segment of the show. We call this the Milemarker Minute. It's a series of lighthearted, lightning round questions aimed to get to know you as a person a little bit better outside of the RIA industry. So you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
Sounds scary, but yeah, let's do it.
I love it. All right, first question. Where in the world would you love to travel to that you've never traveled to before?
Well, I'd like to go to the Philippines. My son-in-law is from the Philippines. I'd love to see where he's from. So
I love that. That's awesome. Okay. What is the best book you have read or listened to in the last 12 months?
Traction. So EOS Traction. So we're in our business runs on EOS. Will Carbach is our implementer. He's great. And so that book I've read like 7 times in the last 6 months.
Scale of 1 to 10, based off of that answer, scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think you're implementing Traction and EOS right now?
So I got started a long time ago with Dan Sullivan at the Strategic Coach, and he talked about this concept of gapping. So if you're in an airplane, you see the horizon in front of you, you never reach the horizon. And the difference between where you are and where you want to be is the gap. And I'm going to say we're gapping. I think we could do better, but my son is really the guy in charge of implementing what we're doing or integrating it, and he's doing a great job.
Awesome. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Okay. If you could wakeboard or snowboard for the rest of your life, you could only choose one. Which one are you choosing?
I guess snowboard.
Yeah. I love it. All right. And then true or false? We will have a $1 trillion AUM RIA in the next 5 years.
True.
I love it. All right. You made it through the Milemarker Minute. Rob, this was such a fun conversation. Thank you for sharing all of your insights, your experience, and your knowledge on growing Hoxton Wealth and Planning. I love your story. I love some of the things that you shared today, and I'm really grateful that you came on the show.
Kyle, thanks so much. It's always fun talking about yourself, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's been another episode of The Connected Advisor. Please make sure you click follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this, because we want to have as many subscribers and people listening to us as Rob has. So please make sure you're clicking subscribe or follow. Also, if you'd be kind enough to leave us a review so that somebody who hasn't found this show yet, they can find a great conversation like the one I just had with Rob. Also, do be sure to check out The Last Paycheck, Rob's show. We'll link that in the show notes, along with the other stuff that they're doing. But until next time, enjoy every mile.